What's up, guys? So as requested, we got the iPhone 16 Pro Max versus the iPhone 11. A lot of people were not impressed with the 11 to 16 upgrade, so got a lot of requests. Well, what if you go ahead and just go all out and get the biggest model here? So there's going to be a big difference here when it comes to the size here. So let's go over that, because I think that's the most important thing. You're going to be going from a somewhat kind of one-handable phone to a gigantic phone. Just to show you guys the size difference here, so you guys can see the 16 Pro Max just towers over the iPhone 11. It's a much taller device here. Hardware wise, there is a few things going on here. So right, you have Apple's titanium design on here, which makes the phone lighter. Compared to the iPhone 11, it's a heavier phone, right? And you'll notice that for sure. If you're coming from an iPhone 11, you'll definitely notice that it's a heavier phone. As far as the button placements go, you have a new capture button on the 16 Pro Max, and it's a button that I'm not a huge fan of, again, because of the placement of it. Some people might like it. It's a little bit better on the 16 Pro Max in landscape mode, but to me it's a little bit finicky, and I just don't think it's faster than the on-screen buttons. But if you're really into taking pictures and stuff like that, you might find this button to be useful. It's also supposed to be a AI button as well too. It's basically going to do the Google Lens thing. And then also with the button here, we have the action button that you will be getting instead of the mute switch. So the action button, you can pretty much put anything you want on here. So you can launch applications, basically whatever. So that's a really cool thing. And the biggest thing here is actually going to be the USB Type-C. So you have USB Type-C instead of, just the standard, the old port here. So that's probably the biggest things with the hardware. All right, so on the back, we've got 3 cameras now instead of the dual camera setup. And then you also do have a matte finish instead of the glossy finish, which the glossy finish, depending on the color, you really won't see fingerprints. But with the matte finish, of course, you won't see fingerprints on pretty much all the Pro Max colors. So that's really nice. But yeah, so that's the biggest thing here with the hardware. All right, so let's talk about the display upgrade here. This is a pretty big upgrade here across the board. So with the iPhone 11, this phone has a 6.1-inch display. It's IPS LCD display, 625 nits for the brightness, and it is a basically 720p plus display. It's 326 for the PPI. Really still looks pretty sharp, and I think it still looks alright in 2024, actually, considering that the specs aren't really that impressive on this phone. But you do have the old school notch on here as well too, which is making the phone look a little bit dated. Now with the 16 Pro Max, there is a lot going on here. So now it's an LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display. It's 120 Hz instead of the 60 Hz. You got HDR10 Dolby Vision, and it's 2000 nits peak brightness at 6.9 inches. And you can see dynamic island here with some incredibly thin bezels here. It is crazy, the bezels on the 16 Pro Max this year. It looks like those futuristic renders that we used to see. And yeah, so this phone, it is the resolution on the Max is 1320 by 2868, so very high resolution display at 460 for the PPI. I think this is a fantastic display upgrade here. It's much brighter in direct sunlight. It's also a much bigger display, so if you are someone who watches a lot of content on your phone, maybe you watch a lot of movies, a lot of YouTube, stuff like that, this is a much more enjoyable experience. And then also we have the 120 Hertz, so it just makes the phone overall smoother when you're scrolling and swiping. You will notice that pretty much immediately. Once you do go to 120 Hertz, you can never really go back to a 60 Hertz panel. Because that's how good the 120 Hertz is. You really notice it when you're scrolling applications and stuff like that. So absolutely fantastic display upgrade, I think. Talk about the CPU here. We got the Apple A18 Pro processor, and then we also are running iOS 18, of course, and then we also have the 256 gig 8 GB RAM model. And then with the 11 here, we have Apple's A13 Bionic chip, 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM here. So you can see just a completely massive score difference here, especially in those multi-core. Alright, so let's talk about app loading and the overall experience with that. I would say that it's not really that big of a deal here when it comes to the overall speed here. The iPhone 16 Pro Max is definitely faster, but I think the thing that you will notice the most is actually the animations are just much smoother, and overall there's going to be less kind of little jitters and stuff if you're opening up a lot of applications and stuff like that. So I would say that overall this is a pretty decent speed improvement, but if you're not like a heavy user, you probably won't be too impressed with this. And we can see I actually beat the 16 Pro Max there. And another very important thing is going to be gaming performance. All right, so this is what I would consider a very good upgrade if you are a gamer. Now, the iPhone 11 still actually does a pretty decent job. The only thing I don't like about gaming on the iPhone 11 is that it does heat up a little bit more than I would like. So if you go to settings here, we can actually still play PUBG at HDR Extreme, and it's pretty smooth at the 60 frames. It's not a bad gaming experience at all. So I think gaming experience overall solid, playing Call of Duty and stuff like that. You can still get a pretty decent gaming experience. Now, the 16 Pro Max, because it does have the 120 Hz display, we're able to take advantage of that in games like, you know, Call of Duty and also PUBG, playing at 120 frames here. And it is a day and night difference in terms of the smoothness, and then also we don't have to worry about that kind of heating problem with the 16 Pro Max. So the gaming experience is just, it's fantastic on here. So I absolutely love it. So if you are someone who plays games, they do have, you know, the quote unquote console quality games like Assassin's Creed and the Resident Evil on the iPhone. So it's a very good gaming device if you are, you know, you consider yourself a mobile gamer. All right, let's talk about the overall speaker difference here. So we're at max volume, and I'll let you guys hear the difference. We'll start with the 11. So it is overall an excellent speaker upgrade. It is a much louder speaker. The bass is heavier, and overall the sound quality just sounds a little bit crisper. The iPhone 11 sounds pretty good, especially for its size, but definitely I think you're getting a fantastic upgrade in the speaker department. Alright, so here's what people care about the most. What about the camera? So I'm going to show you guys some side-by-side stills. So let's go over the camera specs here. So on the 16 Pro Max, you will be getting an additional camera. So you have a 48 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel periscope telephoto. This does do 5 times optical zoom with a 48 megapixel ultra wide here as well too. You can shoot in 4K 120 frames now, which is really nice. You do have a macro mode on here as well too. You have a 12 megapixel selfie camera on here that can also shoot in 4K 60. You will also see a cinematic mode on here, which you don't have on the 11 as well. And yeah, so that's basically like the just simple gist of the upgrade here, and you can now go up to 25 times zoom. So with the iPhone 11 here, we have a dual camera setup. It's a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It can shoot in 4K 60 with a 12 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. The max zoom on here is 5 times. So check out these side-by-side stills and video. Let me know what you guys think. Let's talk about the overall battery experience here. So you are getting a pretty big upgrade in the battery department here. So you will be getting an overall bigger battery on the 16 Pro Max. You also will be able to take advantage of the MagSafe capabilities that this phone offers, so you can do the MagSafe attachments and stuff like that. And you also do have a much faster overall charging speed on here as well too. The iPhone 11, it has pretty okay kind of battery life depending on if you're a lighter user, but if you're gaming and stuff, this phone you definitely will have to charge. But overall, the battery life experience is like night and day. It's just a much better battery life experience, especially if you're gaming or doing heavier stuff on your phone here. So I think if you're upgrading for battery life, you definitely are gonna really like the upgrade. They also both the 11 has wireless charging as well, if you didn't know. And yeah, so that's pretty much the gist of the upgrade here. So I'm really curious to see what you guys think. Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.